For professional advice with a personal touch, consult F.L. Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Montreal, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL Montreal's Josh Miller for our season finale. Hello, Josh.
Hello, Dan.
And I'm really happy to be at a very special place for our season finale here with a very special guest. We're at the Ritz-Carlton.
Maison Boulud.
Maison Boulud, in the back in the garden. It's a really fantastic atmosphere. It was our guest choice. Andy Nulman will be our profile this evening.
It's like, let's just call this my cafeteria. It's like my little cafeteria here.
Inspirational cafeteria, no doubt.
Yes, and I get to close the season.
Absolutely.
I may get to close the station. But go ahead, guys.
We're heading into our 11th season now, so you're closing the decade off, really,
Wow.
Andy. And we appreciate you being here. So we're going to have a lot of your advice throughout the show, how to work with creatives. We're going to talk about your career. And at the end, we're also going to talk to Natalie Riviere about the event, Josh, that you guys put on a regular basis called F-Up Nights. And in the last segment, which will be available online for listening, will be a little uncensored.
Talk a little bit more about failures and maybe some of Mr. Nulman's failures.
Yes, there have been one or two today, but continue.
You're still standing, so
Yes.
hey.
So once again, we want to thank the Ritz-Carlton so much. They have a lovely 5 set throughout the summer if you want to come by. They just finished the whole Grand Prix madness, and we're here overlooking the beautiful garden. It's really lush, and we have a little private area here. So thanks again to the Ritz, and we'll be back soon. So do check it out this summer. And Josh, let's look back at the season perhaps for our introductory chat here.
And we've had some phenomenal guests as we've done in our 10th season, and coming up on 250 guests, and there really been some pearls of wisdom, some phenomenal stories, and let's get right to it.
All right. Well, let's pick out maybe some of our favorites from the year, our favorite pieces of wisdom throughout the year. And Andy, feel free to jump in here. But one young man who really impressed me this year was possibly our youngest entrepreneur ever. I'm not sure, but outside of the startups, he may have been our youngest.
Yeah, exactly.
So Nick Melka of Miel MTL, he started the business. He was 19 years old. He's now 25, and he's going around rooftops in Montreal installing beehives.
He's essentially gotten close to the bees, but this story didn't begin with him wanting to make money. This story began with him wanting to save the bees. As a matter of fact, it was also about his own health, because he had undergone a whole bunch of health scare and found out through research and through some alternative medicine that raw honey was going to be the cure for him.
And on top of that, it's delicious. And so he has this model where he's selling to stores and others that actually help grow the honey themselves. It varies depending on what area you're in, what kind of flowers the bees are consuming. I mean, it's really fascinating stuff. So Nick told us, quote, "It's so important to understand your customer and for them to understand the value of your product." And in Nick's case, the value of the product has so much to do with the story and the sustainability of the business and just the sheer goodwill of how he started the whole thing.
And no better lessons learned than after his first year of losing basically his entire bee collection or beehives after one winter, and they all died. But thankfully, he figured that out after a few seasons and kind of pumped out. And now I believe he said 85% of his bees survived the winter. So that's pretty darn good.
Inventory can be tough in that business, I would suspect.
Yeah, well, as long as you behave with it, you're okay.
Boom. Thankfully, you said that, not me. Continue.
You were thinking a thought bubble over your head, Andy.
No way. No puns, my friends. No puns.
Some HR issues, perhaps, when your employees can sting. But anyway, what's one of your picks, Josh?
Well, I would say I'm looking back, and there's another one that stood out. This is a company that has been around a while. It's in aerospace. I just happen to know them pretty well, and This is MHD Rockland, and MHD Rockland has lived through a number. This is probably one of our entrepreneurs that has been around a little longer. So go from Nick, who had only been around a few years, to Brian Dollymore from MHD Rockland, that's been in this business for a good 30 some odd years, and his dad 30 years before him. And he came back and told some stories about merging his and his dad's company, and that was maybe less than perfect. It all worked out in the end, and they're a stronger company as a result. But merging two very different cultures was extremely difficult, and that's not easy. His piece of advice, actually, and he's in a business. He's in military aviation. So imagine military aviation when you're thinking about this quote: work on relationships, build those relationships, Find ways to add value where others won't do it. More often than not, those will pay off in the end for bigger and better projects. So yes, bigger, better projects, military, no question. We won't talk about the American politics and what's good for that. But relationships, absolutely sure with every supplier, every customer.
One person I want to give a shout out to is Dominic Ciarello of Rocket Sport. You have to show your face, Dominic said, for his one piece of advice. And I remember Dominic because he made the news, because he came up with a novel product that answered a real need. And Andy, you'll appreciate this. You probably know Dominic.
Takes the stink out of the hockey stuff.
There you go.
Are you kidding?
You know what it is.
I would never use it because I actually love my odor,
like
but
the stink.
that's a whole other story.
Well, as long as one of you does.
And so I love it because I recall him making the news because he put in the effort. He did a lot of community outreach. He attracted attention organically by just having a good idea and pounding the pavement. And that still works from a PR perspective. If you have a really novel idea and you tell people about it and you keep telling people, you put it out there in the community and you get out there and show your face, like he said, that's a formula for success.
Another one that kind of stands out, Dan, and not so much for his quote, but Zvi Shapiro from New Look Solutions. His quote was meaningful, but that's not part of the story that stood out. His quote was just make sure you have enough money before you start, to put away before starting your business, which people may or may not do, and that's besides the point. But the part of his story that I really liked a lot was when he finally realized that he needed to let go his right-hand person who was the poison behind his business, and how he almost lost his entire team because he kept on the wrong person, the person that basically controlled everything, that wouldn't let things go, that he thought was doing a phenomenal job. He was about to lose his entire team when reality slapped him in the face. And that's tough, because when you have trust in somebody that's been with you side by side for a while, there is nothing harder to do than to realize and say let go. I'm sure we're going to talk about some human resource loves with you, Andy, but I'm sure there's been a few people here or there that have been phenomenal and some that may be a little less so.
They're dead now, but...
Not as a result of... I won't finish that sentence. Andy, I guess just for the listener, maybe you can fill us in on what you're working on now.
Oh, God, I kid around at home with my wife and children, although it's not that much of a joke when you really consider it. I say that these days I am 50% retired and 50% unemployed. Take your pick. So it is basically I get to choose what I want to or don't want to do at this stage in life, which is liberating at times. It's terrifying at other times. You're sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, and then you pick up the phone and start making calls. So it's a lot of fun. My main project really these days, I'm out on boards. I'm on the board of Startup Fest. I'm on the board of Tourisme Montreal, which is an amazing learning experience. But my biggest day-to-day, I guess, is working on a Broadway play. Dan mentioned it. It's called, Les Belles Sœurs, which is the quintessential play of Quebec, but we are bringing it to Broadway. Hopefully it will get there, but the path has been really rapid so far. A lot of people are very impressed with how quickly this has gone. We have a director, we have a producing partner who just is up for multiple Tony Awards in Oklahoma. So we're working with some very, very big people in Broadway. We've raised a good deal of money, and it's moving fast. So hopefully, what I find ironic is I'm partners with a man named Alan Sandler, and it's two Anglophone Jews taking this fleuron québécois and trying to expand it to the United States and around the world.
Cool.
I think it's a lot of fun. How does one get into the play business? Was it just because of Just for Laughs? Like, where was that movement from one to the other?
Well, I guess an entertainment background helps. I guess to get into the theater, two things help. A theatrical background and entertainment background. B, a whole lot of money. Thankfully, I have A. So
and friends with B.
Yeah, and friends with B, exactly. Or hopefully lots of friends with B coming up. But what happened is I saw the play. I saw the Belle Sœurs. I'm a Siegel Center subscriber. I went to see it, and it was basically the best thing I'd ever seen there. And I told that to Alan. I knew Alan from Just for Laughs days. He produced a lot of plays with us in Just for Laughs days, primarily in French. And he invited me to Ottawa and said, "What do you think?" I said, "It's wonderful." And he said, "I want to take this to a greater level, greater heights." And he goes, "I'm getting old. I don't feel like doing all the work anymore. Would you do the work and come aboard and become my partner?" And that was that simple. So really, it's I guess you can call it what is meant to be, that it happened, and there we go.
Excellent. Now there's a lot that goes on when you're putting on a play, and there's a lot of people around you. So from a human resource aspect, I mean, just gathering the people, making sure they're on the same page, working well with you. How do you find the people that you've worked with over all the years?
I've been, as I mentioned before in passing, I've been working for 43 years of my life. And people think that showbiz is such an amazing business, and it's so sexy and it's so glamorous, but it's a business. It's called show business for a reason. And I don't want to demystify it that much, but the difference between what happens in a Broadway play and what happens at Fuller Landau or what happens at CJD is minimal. It is a team working together, trying to put together a product that people will buy. And so the problems, the solutions, the dilemmas are really all the same. You have to find the best people. You have to have a goal in mind, and you have to understand that no matter what your goal is and what you think it's going to be, something's going to screw it up, and you have to be able to deal with everything that comes and trips you up.
When you're looking to surround yourself with those type of people, do you look for certain aspects? I mean, is it skill set? Is it attitude? Is it their fun? Is it
Broadway's a little bit different. You need people.
Could be in any part of your entrepreneurial life.
But yeah, you need people with a bit of experience. But I've always said this, especially when I was at Just for Laughs. I had a slogan, one of many that could be proper T-shirt stuff, and I'd say that give me the heart, the head will follow. You can look at all sorts of people, look at their resumes, and see what they've done. But what people have done sometimes is totally irrelevant to what they will do. And I've always found that people can learn. You can teach people anything. You can. I mean, I'm the worst in accounting, but I'm sure that somebody can, if they sit down, put enough, work behind me and enough effort behind me, they can teach me accounting. But you can't teach heart. You can't teach giving a damn. You can't teach that. So I would always say, give me the heart, the head will follow. So I guess in everything else, but you can just go ahead and have a Broadway director and say, well, give me the heart, the head will follow. The Broadway director should know what he or she is doing. And I say she because we hired a female director for Les Belles Sœurs because it's a show about female empowerment.
Andy Nulman joins us live at the Ritz. And Andy, we're going to come back a little bit to working with creatives from an HR perspective later in the hour. But what is Andy Nulman like as a boss? What is it? Are you like
a tyrant, a lunatic, a mental case? Help!
It's a good thing we're keeping the leash on him for this hour.
We had the whole garden to ourselves here at the Ritz, by the way.
We do now.
Is it like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when you're working with Andy Nulman?
No. I guess it's easy. This is the one thing about bosses. If you ask a boss, what do you like? I mean, you've seen these surveys. What do you like as a boss? Oh, I'm kind. I'm fair. I treat people well. And then you see the employees. What's he like as a boss? He's nuts. He's crazy. He drinks. He screams. He yells. And it's a complete disconnect. So I guess the best way to evaluate a boss is never ask the boss, because what's he or she going to say? I suck? I'm terrible? I make my people cry? Never. The best way to evaluate a boss is peer, what's it called? Evaluation, you could say. So I guess right now, what we should do is open up the lines and take calls from former employees who will go ahead 790. No, I'm kidding with you.
We don't have enough time in the hour for that. So I'll put it differently then.
Please.
Then what's your style? What's your kind of style to manage people or to work with people?
I got it. You know what? I'll tell you why I stopped. Because after a while, this is so terrible to admit, but then again, what are they going to do? People are going to fire me? I'm unemployed and retired. What my style always was, you find the solution. Like let me kind of help you find the solution, and especially at Just for Laughs and at Airborne, where we really went up against with trouble, where in times of Just for Laughs and Airborne, where we were almost bankrupt, and we almost had to close shop, where you have to really rally the troops together. And I think maybe that is, I'm probably good militarily to say, follow me, I'm going to get shot first, but, just follow me into wherever we're going. So, what was the question again?
No, what kind of management style? Like, how do you?
But here's the part I said I hate to admit. after a while, what would happen, people would sit in front of me and tell me their problems, and I would sit there and I had to listen and smile, and I would say, what are you telling me? I don't care about your problems. I don't care about your problems. Find a solution, and that was the hassle.
So empathy wasn't exactly
no,
there.
it was always, please come to me with a solution, and let's try and work this out. Versus, and I tell you, just for us, I had this at times where people would come with a problem, and I say, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And the answer was, well, I don't know. You're the boss. You tell me. And I say, oh, okay, well, I think we're on a different wavelength here, which is why I realized I'm probably not a very good manager.
Today's Entrepreneur on CJD on location this time for our season finale. We're at the Ritz-Carlton, and thank you so much to the Ritz and to Maison Boulud for welcoming us here, Josh. We're in the garden, a beautiful atmosphere. They're open here all summer, and they have a really great 5 cassette they wanted to tell you about, so do drop by over the summer. It's a really great place to have a drink and talk business with Andy Nulman.
Absolutely. It's the fresh air just kind of brings out the inspiration, and the craziness factor is just kind of coming out as well.
And I'm here every day at 5 sets, so just come on. I have nothing better to do. I'm here and ready to tell stories. As long as you buy the drinks, I will be here to tell the stories.
Oh, that's the key. There's the key.
The drinks are flowing. And Andy, let me ask you this. Did Toronto, New York, LA ever tempt you? Because all these years you've been mostly based in Montreal, and one of the advantages is people do business like this, right? Is the joie de vivre a reason why you stayed?
Yeah, I guess so. But, my family was always here. I actually do love Montreal, which is why the fact of being on the board of Tourisme Montréal, for me, is a great source of pride that they would actually think of me to do this. I really, truly do love the city and do believe that its best days are ahead of it, not behind it. But I was offered, I'll just tell you a story. I was offered to work for HBO in the USA, in LA, back in the day, in terms of running its, part of its comedy program when I was at Just for Laughs. And I went down for an interview, and it was the time we were there during the Northridge earthquake. So that was the last major earthquake. And if I'm telling you, that was a biggie. That was a real biggie. And my wife said, you know what, we're ready to move. And my wife said, snowstorm is one thing, but an earthquake, we knew where our kids are, we knew exactly we could reach them, but knowing that an earthquake can happen anytime, we wouldn't know where your kids were, you couldn't reach them. She said, this is where we draw the line, and because of the earthquake, I never moved to LA.
Wow.
So the earthquake it kept me in Montreal. That's either the detriment or the benefit of God's will.
Not even when the earth moves.
Yes,
Not even when the earth moves. So let's kind of talk, and maybe not picking on one particular entrepreneurial business that you've kind of been involved, but from a marketing aspect. I mean, you've spoken. You can be Mr. Marketer at times, and all the businesses, whether it's Just for Laughs or Airborne or Play the Future or whatever it might be, or Belle Sur. Tell us what marketing worked pretty well and what was a total flop.
Well, it's really simple yet difficult. It's simple to talk about yet difficult to do. Marketing, the problem with marketing is that usually you have to talk to other people. You have to run it through legal, and you have to discuss it with a team and get buy-in. Buy-in is the enemy of success. Okay, buy-in there's next year's quote, by the way. Buy-in is the enemy of success. Anything you're going to get buy-in, and you know that there's somebody who's going to not get it, not understand it, and bring down something that's exciting and fun and earth-shattering. So anything that worked were things that we said, let's just take a shot, let's take a risk, let's move, let's get people to talk about things. Let's get people to notice things. Let's get people to outrage them in certain ways. But at least you're not boring. At least you're not, you're taking a handful of razor blades and making them into a Nerf ball. And that's what happens with most marketing, and in many cases, because let's see, we have to run it through legal. When you have to run it through legal, good night, close the door. Don't even do it. When you say I got to run it through legal, just say, okay, it's over, it's finished, because it will be finished. Because there's no way legal is going to say, hey, you know what? That's a great idea, and let's risk, our company's future on it because of the fact that we may be going against the law.
And you've been in business for, we won't say how old you are, but let's say a few decades.
Yeah. I mentioned 43 years 5 times on this show, goddammit.
Well, who am I to keep track of numbers in my profession? So traditional marketing, before social media, before online, before the reputation that you had to manage online before your own, Do you miss that? Do you still do it? Do you still believe?
I think traditional marketing still exists. It just happens to exist in a different medium. The same way traditional marketing worked in radio before it worked in television, and it worked in television before it worked, on social media. It's just a different way to get a message out. But what's the message? What are you trying to say? Are people going to give a damn? Look, I just gave a speech last week at C2, and we talked about one of the elements of the speech was do things that people want to take pictures of. Think like a camera, because people share things that are exciting. Nobody shares something that's boring. They share things that are exciting, that are visually exciting. So in essence, that's a key point of marketing. Will people actually give a damn enough to share it? To say, and great marketing is shared. Poor marketing is ignored. So I can go on and on. But I really think it all boils down to two things. One is guts, and two is to convince those who are afraid that you know what the hell you're doing.
Be different.
We're going to talk more about creativity in a second, but in terms of sort of your business past, did you ever get the feeling that some of your best ideas were terrible? And how do you overcome that feeling? And how do you say, for example, mobile gaming is going to be the next revolution? And how do you convince people that you're not crazy?
Who says he's convinced people he's not crazy?
Yeah. Good point, Josh. Marketing is a combination, it's a 50% vision and 50% larceny. And let me explain why. To be a great marketer or to be a great entrepreneur, you have to see what's coming down the pike. You have to have a vision. This is what's going to happen. But you also have to be a great liar because of the fact that you have to lie to people. That's the larceny part. To say, yes, this will happen, because you don't know. You don't know, and you have to convince them of something that you don't know, which means that in essence you are lying.
But you have to believe your own lie.
Of course, but let me go back for a second. When we were doing Airborne, Garner Bornstein and myself, and I always mention Garner because really it was the two of us, and what a wonderful partner he was. Garner and I, when we had Airborne, we would tell people, we would show a phone that had a green screen with black dots on it and say, one day people will watch television on this. And everybody, including our own board members, thought we were nuts. They said, television? What are you talking about? It doesn't make sense. The screens aren't color. They're pixels. Don't you understand? They're ASCII art. You remember those printers? They used to go, voot, 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 voot. That's the imagery you have on this. What do you mean television? But we didn't know, but that was what we saw. That was what we hoped for. And we said, well, we have to go ahead and create it. So in essence, there's the vision, but there's the larceny. And we had to lie and say, yes, this is coming, because otherwise, what are you going to do? Say, we don't really know, and we hope maybe. No one's going to buy we hope maybe. They're going to buy yes. They're going to buy we see it. They're going to buy believe us. And that's what we had to do.
You mentioned, switching gears a little bit, you mentioned a couple of partners' names in the last little bit. So you've worked with a lot of partners. How is it, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that work with partners. What's been your experience? What would you say to them? Any lessons that you've learned along the way?
I've been blessed by partners in life, my wife being one of them, Garner being another, Alan being another, and I'll mention somebody who's politically incorrect right now, but he was a great partner, Gilberto Rozon. Without Gilberto Rozon, I would not have had the life I had at Just for Laughs. I understand the uncoolness of it. I understand what's going on, but I have to say, put all that aside, and I'm looking at him as a human being and as a partner. There was nobody better. He was the guy who said at all times, take risks. Don't be afraid to fail. He was crazy, but the fact was, a bit so was I. So it was wonderful when your partners are crazier than you. But I've throughout my entire life, I got to tell you, there was never one point in my life where it was solo. There was always a part where I had a superb partner to take me through things.
But you didn't always agree with them? You're always on the same page?
Oh, of
course not.
How
do you deal with conflict with your partners?
Oh, my Lord. I can tell you the conflicts Garner and I had, the conflicts Gilbert and I had. I have letters that back and forth that we sent us back in the days of letters before email, where you can't believe the things we said to each other. But that's the nature of the beast.
Andy will have his one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur on the way. And then for our web listeners, a special extra segment where we talk about Andy's biggest F-ups in business. And this is all part of Josh's F-up Nights, which he organizes with our next guest, Natalie Riviere of Cometa Communications. And welcome back to CJD, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Dan.
So you're here because we're going to talk about creatives, and you run a marketing agency. We've worked together on many projects now, and we're going to talk a little bit, Josh, about working with creatives, something Andy has extensive experience in, and has been known to cause a few HR issues here and there.
I'm sure he has. Maybe we'll talk about them in our final segment about our F-ups or some of his F-ups. But before we get to there and before we get to his one piece of advice, Natalie, you're in the business, you're online branding and strategy. You have creatives that are within your own team. And then there's, of course, dealing with creatives that are maybe part of your customers or clients' teams. So in that context, and a lot of entrepreneurs out there deal with a lot of creatives. What is what are the first thing that comes to mind when you're dealing with creatives in your world?
The word intrapreneur, I guess, and it goes back to the entrepreneurial spirit, whether we're inside a company or not. Everyone is there to offer their unique perspective, their unique talents. And so from the beginning, I'd say everyone has something to contribute. I don't know if you call every single person creative, but everyone definitely has their unique vision and ability to bring to the table. So it's pretty universal in that sense.
How do you control it? I mean, you're dealing sometimes with, we'll call them artistes, and you can kind of pose the same question to Andy at some point, but dealing with artistes, how do you work with them?
Yeah, I actually started the company targeting artists and was working in all different sectors of art in Montreal. And then eventually I switched the word to entrepreneurs. And I think more and more entrepreneurs and creativity is being valued in business. And so over 10 years ago when this was happening, a lot of artists didn't realize that pursuing their art meant they also needed to do their accounting and needed to do their marketing and needed to do their administration and all the things that you don't really consider when you follow a passion. And in Montreal, we can live pretty affordably, and not all of them really ever wanted to get to those parts. And so I shifted gears towards entrepreneurs, but essentially that passion piece is important. And I think creativity now more than ever is being valued in business. And even online, what we're going to see is that content is literally content banking and will act as a currency more and more. And so another shift towards creativity and encouraging arts in business.
I can feel Andy biting his tongue, dealing with artistes, dealing with the creatives, Andy, dealing with people a little bit like yourself, but maybe some a little bit even more out there. What do you say?
Dealing with an artiste is like dealing with a 60-goal scorer in the NHL and going ahead and criticizing them for not back-checking. They are there to score goals. They should be celebrated. They should be encompassed. They should be protected. But it doesn't always happen this way because people actually, and I hate to contradict you because I'm saddened because people hate artists. I got to say that people hate artists. People hate creativity. People hate risk. I see this all the time. I get this all the time. People say, we want to be different. We want to be unique. We want to change things. We want to be wild. Okay, what about this idea? Well, it's a little too wild. Can you bring it down a bit? Okay, what about this? Still a little nutty. What about this? What about this? Oh, this is perfect. Yeah, well, that's exactly what you're doing now. I brought it down 6 levels. I wish I could agree with you. I wish I could see it, but I really do believe that people, and this will and has to change, the majority of people, particularly in business, disrespect, are afraid of, and what's the I'm trying to think of another adjective, but let's just use disrespect. They're afraid of artists. They don't like them. They are afraid of them, and they tolerate them. And I think that's wrong. I think they're as important as anybody else. But man, oh man, it's difficult. And I'm looking at you guys
with so much happening online. Yeah, I think the fear is because if something goes wrong, it's there forever. It's not something that is there and gone. But what does that really mean?
What's working online is the arts. Now it's a video or a piece of visual. Video is everything, and imaging, styling, graphic design. It is putting value there. I happen to work with entrepreneurs mostly, so the kind of companies that feel the way you do aren't the ones that are really serving. I intended this business to support the exactly people that you're talking about.
Good for you, because it's a necessity, and it will drive the economy, because the economy is driven by new ideas. And but unfortunately, in many cases, the people who are in positions of power are the ones who will hold the reins on new ideas, and that's the drag.
One thing I'd like to put on the table is maybe giving creatives, this is something that I've learned from experience, a very clear sense of what their mission is and what their deadlines are. Is bringing that structure, does that help the process?
Deadlines, yes, because in the end, it is a business, and you do have to deliver. I mean, there's a great quote by Steve Jobs, which always said, "Great artists ship," and I do believe that. Artists have to go ahead and bring their stuff to the gallery or wherever. I use the gallery as an example, but in essence, without shipping, without being there, I always said art exists only when people interact with it. Art alone in the studio is masturbation. Nobody goes ahead and there's no interaction. Art is about the relationship between those creating it and those accepting it. But unfortunately, that isn't always the case. But back to with your point about the deadline is important. But other than that, an artist is a different breed. It's a different headspace. It's a different brain space. And you can't expect many times somebody who is no offense to accountants, but an accountant and a lawyer to understand an artist. It's the same way you can't expect a lawyer to, an artist to understand a lawyer and an accountant. They're two separate headspaces, and they should be respected, but it's tough.
For the record, he pointed to me, and I take no offense because I really don't think I'm an accountant, even though the title on my card says so. Thanks very much, Natalie. I don't know if there's a quick final thought to give.
Well, I was just going to say it circles back to relationships, and so we are all different. And you started with one of those lines as the highlight of the year, but working with creatives is still working with human beings, and so relationship skills I think are also as key as ever, regardless of what niche you're working with.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Natalie Rivière, Cometa. And just before we approach the last moment of the program, we'll turn to our guest, Andy Nulman, and ask you, Andy, what would be, if you could pick one, what would be your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur?
For today's entrepreneur, the piece of advice is listen to everyone, but be very selective of what you hear, because everyone's going to talk to you. No matter what they're going to say, they're going to give you advice, they're going to tell you. And you can't cop an attitude to say, I won't listen to you. But you can go ahead and say what you will actually hear. And hearing and listening are two very, very different things. And in the end, believe in yourself. Because I got to tell you, if I can, some of the major mistakes I've made is listening to other people, not following what I really believe. And in the end, you're only going to have yourself to answer to. So if that's the case, forget about it, because they're not going to be there in the end when stuff goes down. So that's it. Listen to everybody, but only hear a few certain things. Be selective.
Andy Nulman, to wrap up our season here on Today's Entrepreneur. Thank you so much, Andy, for dropping by, and thank you for suggesting this beautiful venue, the Ritz-Carlton, and we really appreciate your insights.
Wait till next year. We are going whole hog.
Now, there is more coming for our web listeners. Today's Entrepreneur, our season finale. This is the overtime edition with our guest, Andy Nulman, as well as Natalie Rivière of Cometa Communications. And guys, we're just going to talk about F-ups for the extra segment. Actually, we can just go right ahead and say it.
This is the extra segment. It's a fuck-up.
It's a fuck-up. All right, we just did it. Fuck-up.
We added the extra
we've
letters.
Sworn in a decade. Yeah.
Really?
First time on the air.
Well, maybe not the first time. I think there was one or two that maybe were missed along the way. But
Hopefully.
we don't remember those, so it's okay.
We don't talk about those because the CRTC will have an issue. But nonetheless,
they're so relevant these days. UCK is a lot more relevant than CRTC, but I digress.
So we're talking about the event Fuck Up Nights. So there's one actually in 2 days from now,
June 19th.
June 19th.
It's going to be hosted by Paul Circa at Circa Distilleries. So always good to have a little bit of alcohol and some fuck up stories. They get exponential from there. And I'm going to let Natalie, she really brought Fuck Up Nights to Montreal. So I'm going to give her, her a couple of minutes and kind of talk about that before we get into some of Andy's fuck ups.
And Natalie, this is an international movement, right?
Exactly. At the moment, I think it's over 315 cities are basically hosting these Fuck Up Nights. Which is the same in every city. It's 3 to 4 speakers have 7 minutes to share a professional failure. There's about a 3-minute Q&A. If you have slides, you can have up to 10. And basically this started in Mexico City. 5 friends who loosened up enough with some drinks after work, admitted professional failures, realized that they all had them, and then put it on social Mexican style, Fiesta Viva Mexico style, and it quickly spread.
And now, like you say, it's over 315 cities, and it came to Montreal, because you knew it first, and you brought it to Montreal about 2.5 years ago, and we met so many great entrepreneurs along the way, and heard somebody, I guess, inspirational. If you can call a fuck up story inspirational, then we'll call it inspirational. And for the next part, we're going to turn to Andy, who I'm sure has had 1 or 2 or 1,200. Fuck ups, even though we all know about the successes, and kind of grill him and say, Andy, if you can sort them out in your head, what would be the top of mind fuck up that you can share with us that we can learn from?
There's so many, but I'm trying to think how to frame this properly. The one thing about any fuck up is that it doesn't last. You see, and its status changes over time. And this is something it's really important to remember, that what may seem like disastrous and suicide contemplation today is a story in a bar 2 years from now that you're going to be killing yourselves with laughter, rolling over with laughter. But it's understanding that's really, really important. But I'll tell you, when it goes down, it's hard to appreciate that, oh yeah, one day we will laugh at this. I just spoke to my son the other day. My son has a problem, business problem. He runs a pretty big business. And I said, one day we'll look back on this and laugh. Today it's misery and it's scary, but one day we will look back on this and laugh. And that's the only way to look at any fuck up, because it does become something funny later on. And that's one of the things. What's the expression? Comedy equals tragedy over plus time. So the longer the time, the funnier it gets.
And does he heed that advice? Does he say, "No, Dad, really, don't give me that line. Don't give me that crap. Don't give me that shit. It's crap now. I've got my bad reputation. It's how is it going to get funny?"
But he's seen us go through it and realizes that really it is the case. And I'll tell you, I don't think there's anything better to be told than when you're going through a bunch of grief that, hey, you know what, one day you're going to look back on this and laugh. And from somebody who looks back today and laughs. So I can talk about a number of different fuck ups and again, let's talk a little bit theoretical before we get to the actual
to the anecdotes.
The anecdote, but theoretically, when you are screwing up, today's screw up, maybe tomorrow's success, you just don't know. You just really, really don't know. So I'll give you an example. I guess. When you're looking, I look at some fuck ups and I say, but they're not really, because of the fact that, I learned something, or, but it turned out I met this person and I would have not done that if things didn't screw up.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Just before Natalie jumps in, of all the times that we've asked entrepreneurs, if you could transport your knowledge back to the beginning when you started your business, what would you do differently? And 98 times out of 100, 49 times out of 50, because I can do the math, is absolutely nothing, because whatever I screwed up, whatever I fucked up, whatever I failed at, taught me to be better afterwards. And if I didn't fail then, I might not be as successful now. So I want to go through the exact same path so I can end up here.
And the Failure Institute agrees with you, Andy?
Oh, hallelujah. Wow.
There's a school that agrees with you.
Wow.
Basically, the Fuck Up Nights movement, these events inspired government to ask, look, if you're hearing all these failure stories, why do businesses fail? That inspired studies to happen now around the world, monitoring, depending on the culture, depending on the geographic location, depending on the industry, why are businesses failing? There's a global failure index with over 3,000 data points mapping this work. And they're working now with government, with Ivy League schools on the research side, but companies also started going, well, what about our culture? Could we have a Fuck Up Nights internally to talk about our particular failures? I had been asked on behalf of Fuck Up Nights to go and give a lecture on failure in one of these companies that was looking forward to shifting their mindset a bit. And that's exactly what you described, and exactly what these other entrepreneurs are saying, is that the opposite of failure is the growth mindset, because failure is actually, if you look at all the data, just a mindset. When you're learning to walk, you fall. When you're learning to talk, you stumble. And if you stop
At least
there.
You didn't say slur.
Yes. But it's an important point you said. The opposite of failure is not success. The opposite of failure is
Growth.
learning.
Exactly.
So, but let me take you back a couple of examples, if I can. Let's face the fact on failure. No matter what, then we can laugh at it. We got fuck up nights and fail camp and this and that. It still hurts. Nobody likes to fail. Nobody likes to strike out. Nobody likes to lose money. Nobody likes a show to fail. Nobody likes their business to fail. Nobody likes a new product launch to flop. Nobody likes it. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't. It feels terrible. But the point of the matter is, it's reality. It's reality. It happens. And to say it doesn't happen is psychosis. That's it. To say it will never happen, I can't fail, is psychosis. And that's worse than failure. Psychosis, a mental illness, is worse than failure. Failure is cool. If you can deal with it. And dealing with it means, like, okay, I know it's going to hurt, and I know it sucks, I know it feels bad, but I will get over it. And that's the problem. Many times the problem is not getting over it, and that brings up a whole bunch of issues.
So spill a couple of the beans. Can you pick a fuck up that you've been through, that you lived
through?
The
major fuck up. There's a zillion I can tell you about shows that failed and this didn't work, and but there's two that come to mind, and I'm going to give you a silly one and then an important one. The silly one is we did something at CTIA, Cellular Telecommunications Industry of America. Long story, but we wanted to do some sort of promotion that did something different and didn't cost us a lot. So I came up with the idea of stamping American dollar bills with them. And actually, it was ironic because the message was of a game we were launching in the States called Donald Trump's Real Estate Tycoon, believe it or not.
How long ago was this?
This is, oh my God, 15
pre-Donald.
Yes. And he was our partner. This is a complete other surreal story for another radio show, or podcast.
Fuck up nights.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, we stamped $1,000 bills and it said on the dollar bills there's only two ways to beat Donald Trump: A, collect a few billion more of these, or B, play Donald Trump's Real Estate Tycoon, which is the game we were producing at Airborne Mobile. Anyway, our idea was at this conference where we had to make some sort of splash. We were on a panel discussion. At one point in time, myself and four employees threw these dollars into the air, and the place went nuts because when they finally realized, hey, these are real dollars, they went berserk. So you had people fighting, overturning tables, pushing each other, and I was thrilled. I thought this was the time of my life. It did everything I wanted it to do. It caused a stir. People were talking about us. But then after we got banned from the conference, so you can never ever come back here because our advertisers are really pissed. The people were writing about it and saying, about how lunatic it was. And I remember Garner Bornstein, my partner at the time, came up to me and he says, "This is not your finest moment," and I felt terrible. And
then he said, "I'll be back."
But then when I look at it now, and even a little later, for months after and for conferences after, people were coming up to me, "Are you throwing dollar bills this time? Are you throwing dollar bills?" People remember that, and so. The point of the matter is that, wow, it hurt and it was terrible and it was a huge screw up at the time, perhaps. But in retrospect, people never forgot that. And I never forgot that. And it's a great story now. And I think when you look back and we end up selling a couple of years later, to me, that was one of the turning points where people started to really take notice of us. So, but I felt so crummy that day. I said, "Oh, what have I done?"
Is that one of those, there's no such thing as bad publicity?
I guess, there is, but trust me, believe me, don't even go there, but I know bad publicity, and I can tell you all sorts of stories, but anyway, but let's not even go there. But these days, there's lots of bad publicity, but let's not even go there. But but in the end, it was kind of fun. I'm happy I did it. But here's the major one. Dan, you have something you want to say?
Before you get to the major one, let me ask you this. When you do mess up, and I think myself and other entrepreneurs can get over the messing up and move on, but what if your audience doesn't get over it? Like, what if it takes a bit of a process to convince your audience that you are turning a page? How do you do that?
That's tough because in the end, audiences rule, but also remember, you can't let the audience always guide what you do. You have to have a belief in what you do. And sometimes if all you do is bend to the whims of an audience, you will just be a puppet your whole life. Sometimes you have to say, you know what? I know better than you. And I know I will give you what you want, but I also know what you need. And that's a big statement. That's a big, big statement. And in business, sometimes that can, you say, I got to listen to my audience. But, there's the old story. If Henry Ford listened to his audience, we would all be driving nicer horses now, somebody has to have a vision. Somebody has to take the lead. And what I found in life, and this is no offense to anybody listening or to the mass of people who are out there as a quote unquote audience, but people like to be led, and audiences will. If you go ahead and let yourself be led by them all the time, it will be problematic. People want new things, and they will follow you, but you have to have the guts for them. You have to have the guts. An entrepreneur, by nature, has to have the guts for his, her, or their audience.
Entrepreneur equals risk taker to different degrees, no doubt, but in some way, shape, or form, they have to be some type of risk taker.
100%. Which brings me to the biggest. You said the biggest screw up. Here's the biggest screw up in my business life. We had just sold Airborne Mobile for a lot of money, and at the time we didn't realize it at the time. But at the time in 2006, it was the biggest, private sale of a company, in the tech space in the country ever. We didn't realize that, but we also, Garner and I, we sold the business, and at the time we were so early in mobile that we sold before the iPhone came out. Okay, so that's how early we were. We sold before the iPhone came out, and then the iPhone came out, and we were purchased by a Japanese company. We were working for this Japanese company, and the iPhone came out, and we were not in the first wave, meaning the iPhone came out and here's the apps that are in it, but in the second wave where they said, hey, you know what? The iPhone's out. We would like you, given your expertise, we would like you to start creating apps for the iPhone. And what we said at the time, we just sold the company. We were a little bit high on ourselves, a little bit, fat. And when I say fat, I mean, we're sitting back and enjoying the fruits of our labor. We said, well, you know what? What's the business model? And they said, well, it's 70-30. We take 30%, you get 70, but you have to do all the marketing. Well, 70%. Let's wait and see how you do. And when you've proven yourself to us, come back, please, and we'll see if we'd like to work for the iPhone and Apple. Thank you very much.
Is that a Japanese accent that you're working on?
No. That is a very British, pompous, feed me a grape accent.
Wave the palm, yeah.
And we said, come back to us. And anyway, the end result is we still sold the company, we still did well, but we missed the opportunity to be on the ground floor of the iPhone revolution. Why? Because we were content with our success. We were happy. We were fat. We were slovenly. And that was the biggest lesson in my life, was we lost the hunger, and never to lose that hunger, and never to believe your own hype, and never to think you're that smart. You sold your company. Wow, how impressive. You were lucky. You were right place, right time. You worked hard, but it's not that you're a genius. You happen, you were right place, right time, hard work, all that together managed. Allowed you to sell your company, not because you're so smart. And we actually, maybe I can't really speak for Garner, I will speak for myself, thought I was smart, and let's wait and let's see. And that, so let's get back to this. So the major lesson here is that the failure is not anything I did. There's never a failure that I did that I could not get over. But the failure of what I didn't do is what kills me. The failure of what I didn't do, of saying, I had the opportunity and I didn't do it because I was afraid, or I was fat, I was lazy, that's what kills me. There's the old expression of it's such an old expression I can't remember it now. But it's whether if you do something and you fail, big deal. But if you don't do something and you fail, and there's never a regret, ever a regret of anything I've done. But there's the regret is what I didn't do, and I had it in the palm of my hand.
Does that mean you've never done something that you've regretted afterwards?
No,
that's rhetorical.
Not really. No.
Have you always gone out after that? Did you truly learn your lesson and say, if I'm going to go in, I'm going to go in whole hog, and I'm not going to get fat, and I'm not going to get lazy?
Oh God, yeah.
Maybe too much.
Yeah, but to this point where, and also, but sometimes you have to say you got to know when to quit. But you got to know when to quit when you say, you know what, the effort I'm putting in is not worth the return I'm taking out. That's fine, but that's not different. That's way different from saying, oh, you know what, don't feel like doing it anymore. It's fine. I don't have to work that hard. Untrue. So yeah, it's anything I've done, and there have been plenty of failures since, and things that didn't go my way. But at least I can say, hey, you know what? I took the shot. Maybe my timing was off. Maybe this was off. Maybe my strategy was off. Maybe my marketing was off. But at least I did it versus not doing it.
Anything in your just for laughs part of your life that was kind of a bit of a fuck up or something that you can remember? And I'm not talking about...
Look, there were so many, but I'll give you an example of something that didn't work. I don't see it as a fuck. I think it's a major success. But but if you look at it from the success, from a standard success standpoint, you'd see it as a huge failure. 21 years ago, I launched a show called In Through the Outdoor. It was the world's first all-gay and lesbian sketch comedy show. I thought at the time, and this
Avant-garde.
Avant-garde. This was the delusion. I thought, I'm going to be in like Time magazine as here's the person who has managed to bring everyone together and a big kumbaya moment, straight, gay. What does it matter? We are all one. So I did this show. And I managed to convince some major talent. I was, if you can see it on YouTube. It's available on YouTube. In Through the Outdoor, THRU, by the way, and I thought that it was going to be a massive success, and people were going to take to it, and I assembled this team of gay writers and performers. Leah Delaria from Orange is the New Black, she was in it, and I was mercilessly lampooned as the straight producer who thought he knew what the hell he was talking about, which was hilarious. It was like a priest trying to do, hey, I got a Jewish humor show we're going to put together. That was me. But in the end, when I look at this show now, it's I say, this is amazing. I can't believe I did this. But at the time, here's what happened. I will never forget this. The show aired. We sold it to CBC and to Showtime. We got an American deal on this show. And it ran on CBC and on Showtime. CBC, and this is pre-internet. You got to remember, this is 1998. That's 21 years ago. Yeah, 1998. So this is pre-internet. So if somebody complained about something, they had to call CBC or write them, okay, or maybe email them. But primarily it was call. So they gave us this list of people complained, and these were the complaints. Every show 1-2-1-0-1-2-1-0-1-2-0-0-0-1-2 850 1-2. We were the 850, and the other complaints were like, oh, Peter Mansbridge, I don't like the color of his tie. The credit's too fast on this. Our complaints were, how dare you? I'm never going to watch CBC again. I'm complaining to the government about you. You are going to hell. You will be damned. It was amazing the amount of complaints because everyone complained. Straights, gays. Gays said, how dare you portray us like this? Straights say, how dare you put this on television?
Equal opportunity offender. I think it's great.
Oh, my God. Everybody hated it. And then so CBC called and said, listen, I know we're planning this as a pilot for the series. Forget it. This is it. Showtime. Figured, okay, in the States, Matt Blank, the president of the Showtime, never forget, called me. He said, Andy, we have 15. We have a window. Window means how many times you can air the show. We have a window of 15 airings in the show. Keep your money. We're not showing it again. The response has been so... People are freaking out. They're calling us all sorts of bands. We're losing subscribers. So is that a fuck-up? You can say on one hand, yes, but it was a matter of timing. I was just really maybe 2 decades
You're ahead of your
too early.
time. Yeah.
But it's you did quotes on an earlier show. You're doing quotes of this year. A quote I read earlier this year from Chris Arsenault's group, Innovia Capital. They put out this book of quotes and one of them was, being too early is just another way of failing. And I said, oh, that's powerful. But in essence, maybe they're right. Maybe that is right. So, but in the end, when I look at it now, I am proud as hell because very few people had the guts to go ahead, not just say, hey, here's an idea, but to work 4 years to raise the money, to get the cast, to get the goddamn thing on the air. That was me.
One of your friends that's been on the show and has spoken at Fuck Up Nights, Justin Kingsley, his quote, his one piece of advice was get a virtual fuel tank for your back because you just need that energy. It doesn't matter who knocks you down. Doesn't matter. You just need to get up and get going.
I've always said, you know what? In the end, it was a quote by Ayn Rand when people were dumping on Atlas Shrugged. And she just said, she just looked at her detractors and said, I pity them because they just don't understand. And in the end, that's what I had to do it in through because I couldn't buy into the fact that they knew better than me. I said, you know what? I pity them. They just don't understand. They are homophobic. They are backward. They are overly conservative. They are whatever. I am right. And I still, unfortunately or fortunately, I still believe that.
We know there's so many more fuck up stories to tell, and I think we would welcome you at any future fuck up night. So I think we need to make that happen. What do you
Here's
think,
the
Natalie?
question: if I come to fuck up night and succeed, do I Does that is that sort of
Oxymoronic?
Yeah. What happens?
Are
if
we
you come-
calling you a moron again?
Yeah. If you come to Fuck 'em Night and you succeed, is that like with a paradox? One may say.
It means you'll have fun, and,
Okay, thank you.
and
That's well put.
It's built in the name.
Well, Andy Nulman, that wraps it up for today. And thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the suggestion of the venue as well. And for you to close out the season, it's been really great chatting with you. Thank you.
Just one more question, guys.
Yeah.
You have a question for us?
This is the decade. I closed it the decade.
Yeah.
You're closing the
pretty much.
decade.
Took you 10 years to get me on this show. Screw you.
We needed your fucking wisdom, okay? And maybe it took that long to
10
get there.
years.
We had to get really fucking big before we could invite
10
you.
years. See how old I am now? Oh, God.
Monday nights at 7 on CJAD 800 in Montreal. Today's entrepreneur.org. You can hear the whole 10 years without Andy at the website. And we'll see you back here in September.
This has been a production of TNKR Media. Good talk.